My wife left me for her female best friend. Now they want me to co-parent her baby. Yeah, that sentence sounds like a bad sitcom pitch. But it was my actual life for a few weird, painful, and incredibly awkward months. I used to think I had a pretty solid marriage, comfortable, predictable in a good way. Jenna and I had been together for 7 years. She was this ball of chaotic energy that lit up a room. Interior designer, loved plants, color palettes, throwing pillows, and loud playlists on Sunday mornings. And then there was Riley. Riley had been her best friend since college. She was always around, always texting, always hugging Jenna just a second too long, whispering jokes that never made it to me. They had girls-only weekend getaways more often than I thought necessary. But I trusted her. I really did. Once, half joking, I asked, "You sure I'm not losing you to Riley?" Jenna laughed. She actually laughed out loud. "You're ridiculous," she said, ruffling my hair like I was a nervous golden retriever. "She's my best friend, not my girlfriend." And because I was the logical, quiet one, the guy who believed people when they looked him in the eye, I let it go. But that morning, that one ordinary Saturday morning, it changed everything. The sun was pouring through the kitchen window, making her hair glow like it always did. I was making coffee, half listening to her humming something under her breath. Then she said it. "I'm moving out." I blinked. "What?" "I'm moving in with Riley." I thought maybe I hadn't heard her right, or maybe it was a joke. Then she added, "I love her. I've loved her for a while. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. I'm sorry." She said it with the kind of calm only someone who had rehearsed every word could manage. I stared at her. The French press hissed. The smell of dark roast filled the silence, which now felt oppressive. "You're leaving me?" I asked, still clutching the coffee spoon like it might ground me in reality. "For her," she said quietly. Yes, she didn't cry. Neither did I. There was just this stillness, like the house itself didn't want to move until it could figure out what the hell had just happened. And just like that, she walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. I sat down on the cold kitchen tile, alone with my untouched coffee and the scent of vanilla creamer, wondering when exactly my life had turned into a punchline. After Jenna left, my apartment felt like a hotel room someone forgot to check out of. Her scent still lingered on the couch cushions. A single bobby pin on the bathroom sink mocked me every morning. For a while, I lived like a ghost. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. I buried myself in projects at my job. IT consulting for mid-sized companies who couldn't keep their cloud infrastructure straight. It was something I could control, unlike, well, everything else. Eventually I started cooking again. Nothing fancy, just the basics. Stir-fries, pasta, chicken that didn't taste like cardboard. It was oddly comforting, chopping vegetables in silence. At least they didn't lie to me. Old movies helped too. I rewatched Rear Window 3 times in 1 week. Not for the mystery. Just for the sense that someone else out there was watching a mess unfold and trying to make sense of it. My friends tried, God bless them. Josh invited me to a barbecue in his backyard. "You need real food, man. And beer. And maybe to get laid." I didn't tell him that the thought of sleeping with someone else made my skin crawl. At the cookout, someone asked where Jenna was. I smiled and lied. "She's doing her thing." That was the best I could manage. And then there was Tinder. Yeah, I caved. Josh helped me set it up after his 3rd IPA. He said I needed a rebound phase and that it'd be good for my ego. What he didn't say was that dating apps at 34 are like trying to find love in the clearance bin of a haunted thrift store. My first match asked, "So you're bi now too?" I deleted the app 15 minutes later, and through it all, silence from Jenna. A couple of texts, "Sure, how are you? Hope you're okay." Dry, sterile. Like she was checking on a coworker who had the flu. I never replied. But slowly something shifted. I changed the curtains in the living room, gray instead of floral. Bought a ridiculously expensive armchair just because I liked how it felt when I sat in it. Started calling the apartment mine, not ours. The space stopped echoing her name. It wasn't healing exactly, more like recalibrating. Then, 6 months to the day since she left, I got a text. "Jenna, can we talk? It's important." I stared at the screen for a full minute. My thumb hovered over ignore, but instead, I typed back, "Me, sure. What's up?" Because I'm an idiot. Or maybe just someone who still didn't know what chapter he was in. The cafe Jenna chose had plants growing on the walls. Not in pots, literally growing on the walls, like the building was trying to reclaim some lost connection to nature through overpriced lattes and reclaimed wood. I walked in 5 minutes early and spotted her immediately. She was seated at a corner table by the window, sunlight catching the copper in her hair. She looked good, glowing even, healthier, happier. It was like seeing someone you used to know in a movie role, familiar but no longer yours. She smiled when she saw me. I sat down across from her. We exchanged a few awkward pleasantries. How was work? How was the dog? Was I still living in the apartment? Then she said it. I'm pregnant, and it's yours. I blinked. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain short-circuited and didn't know what else to do. I'm sorry, I said. What? Jenna took a breath, calm and measured. I'm pregnant, about 5 months now. And it's yours, Ethan, but how? I stammered. I mean, how is that possible? And then it hit me. That night. 2 weeks before she left, we'd gone to a party at her friend Lila's place. Too much wine, too many old college stories. We got home tipsy and nostalgic. I barely remembered getting into bed, but I remembered waking up next to her, tangled in sheets, her head on my chest. It hadn't felt like a goodbye then. She watched me put the pieces together. That night. You remember? Yeah, I said slowly. I do. Silence settled between us for a long moment. The clinking of coffee cups and distant blender noises filled the space. We didn't plan it, she said finally. Riley and I weren't trying to trap you, or whatever you might think. You and Riley, I said. So you were already together? Jenna looked down at her drink. Her fingernails tapped the ceramic mug, a rhythm of discomfort. It was complicated. I didn't mean for it to happen that way. I exhaled through my nose, staring out the window. A dog barked at a pigeon across the street. The world apparently hadn't gotten the memo that my reality was cracking again. And now what? I asked. What do you want from me? She met my eyes. We want you to be in the baby's life, that's all. Not as a couple, not romantically, but as their father. I know it's a big ask. We, I echoed. You and Riley? Yes. I tried to picture it, Jenna and Riley raising a baby in their stylish apartment full of throw pillows and macrame, and me. Somewhere in the margins, a floating dad figure, occasional babysitter, holiday visitor. It made my head hurt. I need time, I said quietly. This is a lot. Of course, she said. Her voice was soft, but there was a tremble under it. We didn't hug. We didn't touch. I just stood, nodded once and walked out. The plants on the wall seemed to blur as I passed them. Or maybe that was my eyes. A week later, I found myself standing on the porch of Jenna and Riley's new house, which looked like a Pinterest board come to life. White brick exterior, matte black trim, succulents in little pots lining the windowsills. The kind of place you walk into and immediately feel underdressed, no matter what you're wearing. The door opened before I could knock. Riley stood there, barefoot but somehow still intimidating. Her dark hair was pulled into a no-nonsense bun, and she wore a beige linen jumpsuit like it was armor. Ethan, she said with a nod. Come in. Jenna waved from the kitchen, where she was arranging lemon slices in a water pitcher, like we were about to discuss wedding catering, not the fate of an unborn child. We sat in the living room. Well, they sat on one end of a minimalist L-shaped couch. I took the accent chair that looked more like art than furniture and tried not to shift too much. Riley opened a manila folder and placed it on the coffee table. I blinked. Are we signing something? No, Riley said calmly. This is just to keep things clear. We thought it'd be helpful to set expectations. Expectations. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. Jenna gave me a soft smile. We just want to talk about how this might work. No pressure. Right, Riley added, folding her hands in her lap. You wouldn't be financially responsible. No child support, no custody fights. We're not looking to complicate your life. We just think it's important, for the baby, that they know who you are, that you're around. And what would being around look like? I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. Birthdays, occasional weekends, maybe the holidays. We'd keep you updated on milestones. You could visit, come to events. But the day-to-day would be us. I looked around. The house felt like a showroom, neatly folded blankets, scented candles, tasteful lighting. There was no space for me here, not really. I nodded slowly, then asked, So? I'm important, but not too important. Riley's jaw tensed just slightly. We just want what's best for the child. We thought including you, in a manageable, intentional way, would be beneficial for everyone. That's when she said it. You're the biological contributor, Ethan. That matters, even if it's not everything. Biological contributor. The words hit me like a slap wrapped in silk. Cold, calculated, professional. I stared at her. Wow. That's what I am to you? It's not personal, she said quickly. We're trying to define roles here. Jenna reached over, touching Riley's arm. Hey, that sounded harsher than we meant. Did it? I said, more to myself than them. Then I looked at both of them, letting the silence sit heavy for a moment. Riley's mouth twitched. A flicker of something passed between them. Jenna blinked, her expression stunned, like she hadn't even considered that I might ask. Of course, she said quietly. We wouldn't do that. I waited. Riley didn't echo the reassurance. Just gave me that same neutral stare. Thanks for the lemon water, I said, not looking at either of them. I'll think about it. I walked out of their perfect little house and into the too bright sunlight, suddenly exhausted. The moment I got home, I did what any self-respecting overthinker with mild control issues and a whiteboard would do. I started writing. Dates, events, memories, everything. I pulled out my calendar, old texts, email receipts, anything that could help me retrace the timeline of my supposed contribution to this baby's existence. There was one night, exactly 2 weeks before Jenna moved out, when we'd hooked up after a party at her friend Cassie's loft. I remembered we both had too much sangria, and Jenna had pulled me into the guest room while everyone else was still playing Cards Against Humanity in the kitchen. The next morning, we didn't even talk about it. But then I looked at the week before that. I'd had the worst cold of my life. Not the dramatic man flu, but actual fever, chills, coughing up what felt like parts of my soul. I'd been on the couch for 4 days straight, living off NyQuil and Netflix, which meant, if Jenna had already been pregnant when she told me? I sat back and rubbed my face. Could it be someone else's? I didn't want to go down that road, but now the thought wouldn't leave me alone. It crawled into the back of my brain and made a nest. I needed perspective, so I texted Mark. Mark and I had been friends since college, same dorm, same addiction to bad pizza and fantasy novels. He was one of the few people I'd told the whole messy Jenna Riley story to. He replied in 5 minutes. You okay, man? Define okay. Fair. Beer? We met that night at a bar near his office, one of those places with dim lighting, chalkboard menus, and craft beer that tasted like grapefruit had beef with your tongue. So, Mark said, after I filled him in, you're possibly a dad now, but not a dad. Like a guest star, right, I said, staring into my IPA. A biological contributor. Mark winced. Damn, that's cold. There was a pause. He tapped the rim of his glass. You know, I always thought Riley was with some dude before she moved in with Jenna. My head snapped up. What? Yeah, I saw her a couple times at that rooftop place on Main with this tall guy. Blonde. Looked like he worked in finance or did CrossFit for a living. This was, maybe 8-9 months ago? Are you sure it wasn't just a friend? Mark shrugged. Could have been. But they looked, not just friends, if you know what I mean. And suddenly, everything shifted. Timelines, looks, pauses in conversation. The moment Riley had stiffened when I asked if the baby was mine. Jenna's too fast, of course. I left the bar with more questions than I came in with, and a growing feeling in my gut that I didn't like. Something wasn't adding up, and I was done being left out of the math. I wasn't trying to stalk anyone. Okay, maybe I was. But only because something smelled off and I was tired of pretending it didn't. Late one night, after another failed attempt to watch a movie without my brain spiraling, I ended up on Riley's Instagram. Her profile was mostly aesthetic shots, plants, latte art, sunrise yoga. But buried between a post about emotional clarity and one of her standing on a paddleboard was a group of photos from a forest retreat last year. Tall trees, fog, campfire smiles. And in the third photo, there he was, a man. Bearded, flannel-wrapped, with a soft smile and his arm around Riley's waist like it belonged there. They weren't kissing, but the body language? Definitely not just friends. My heart did this weird thump-skip thing. I zoomed in. Checked the geotag, Silver Pines Wellness Camp, WA. Scanned the comments. Most were vague. Looks amazing. nature heals, but one stood out. Brandon hikes missed that weekend. I tapped the handle. It led to a private profile, but the bio said, Seattle nature, coding and coffee, be kind. That was enough. I hesitated for a few minutes, then I DM'd him. Hey. Random question, but did you know Riley from the Silver Pines retreat last year? I didn't expect an answer. But 10 minutes later, I took a breath. Just trying to understand a situation. Were you two involved? He replied with a typing bubble that stayed way too long. Yeah. We were seeing each other for a while. She was honest though, said it was complicated. That she was living with a woman but wasn't exclusive, and her girlfriend was going through a divorce. She said they wanted a baby and didn't want to do the whole sperm bank thing. My stomach dropped. Wait. She said what? That it was all fluid and they wanted it to be natural. She said I didn't have to be involved, that it was her choice. I walked away when it got too weird. Why? My hands were cold on the keyboard, because now the math made sense. The timelines, the awkward glances, the rushed explanations. The you're important but not too important talk. They had planned it, not with me, with someone. And when Brandon backed out, they pivoted to the guy who wouldn't question too hard, who was technically still in the picture, who'd always believed his marriage was built on trust. Me. I'd never thought I'd be the type of person to demand a DNA test. But there I was, sitting across from Jenna in her living room, now their living room, with Riley's picture frames on the shelves, and the faint scent of her perfume still hanging in the air. I could practically hear Riley's voice in the background, always calm, always controlling. I wasn't calm though. I want a DNA test, I said as firmly as I could, though my throat felt tight. Jenna blinked at me, clearly caught off guard. She sat up straighter, almost defensive. What? Ethan, that's ridiculous. Why would you even— Because I need to know, I interrupted. I need to know if that baby is even mine, and I'm not going to just blindly accept your word anymore. Her face shifted from confusion to something else. A small flash of frustration, maybe? She crossed her arms, then dropped them with a sigh. You don't trust me? The hurt was so real in her voice it stung like a slap. I don't trust anyone anymore, I said. I could feel the weight of the past few months crushing me again. The lies, the secrecy, the manipulation. She stood up, pacing now. You don't understand, Ethan. I didn't do this to hurt you. I wanted our child to have a father who cared, who would be there for them. I didn't want them to grow up without that. I didn't want them to feel abandoned like— Her voice cracked, but she quickly swallowed it down. Like I did. I stared at her, blinking away the sting in my own eyes. This isn't about me, is it? This is about you, and about Riley, making sure you got everything you wanted without any of the consequences. Her face went pale. That's not fair. No. What's not fair is using me as a backup plan. I deserve the truth. I didn't care anymore if she was upset. I needed answers. I wasn't going to play this game any longer. She took a deep breath. Her shoulders slumped as if giving in. Fine. We'll do the test. But Ethan, please understand. I just wanted to make sure the baby had a father. I nodded, already stepping toward the door. We'll see. 2 days later, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the envelope in front of me. It was sealed, but I knew what was inside. It had to be the results from the DNA test. I couldn't breathe properly as I held it between my fingers, the air in the apartment suddenly too thick. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to know. But at the same time, I needed to. I had to put this chapter to bed, one way or another. I ripped open the envelope, the paper rustling in the quiet. The test results stared back at me, not a match. I closed my eyes, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. There was a strange hollow silence in the room. A weight lifted, but another replaced it. One that was heavier. The shock had worn off, and now there was only this strange mixture of relief and pain. I wasn't the father. It wasn't my child. And part of me was glad for that. But another part of me was devastated by what that meant. It meant I had been lied to. It meant everything had been a manipulation. And what was worse, I hadn't even been the one they'd truly wanted in the first place. It was a cold, hard truth, and it stung more than I could have imagined. The final meeting. I'd been putting it off for days, but I couldn't avoid it any longer. I had to face them, both of them. I wasn't ready, not really, but I had made up my mind. I had to confront them, to get the truth out once and for all. When I arrived at their house, everything looked the same. The plants on the windowsill, the artwork Jenna had chosen, the soft hum of the refrigerator. Nothing had changed. Except now it felt more like a stranger's home than a place I once thought I could belong to. I walked in, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was tense, and they were already waiting for me. Riley stood near the kitchen counter, her posture rigid, eyes glaring. She didn't bother with any pleasantries. "You've ruined everything, Ethan. We could have been a family. A real family." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. A family? She wanted me to be a part of that twisted little arrangement? I wasn't sure whether to feel sorry for her or just disgusted. "Riley," I started, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "I didn't ruin anything. You and Jenna did. You were lying to everyone, and you still are." Jenna, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. She shifted in her seat, looking at the floor before raising her eyes to meet mine. "You're right," she said softly. "I lied. I wanted it to be you. I thought it would be the right thing. For the baby. For us." Her voice cracked, the tears welling up, but she blinked them away. "I thought it would be the right thing." I stared at her. "Right? You wanted to fix everything with lies, with manipulation? Is that how you thought this would work?" Riley's eyes narrowed. "It wasn't like that." "You don't get it, Ethan. We wanted something better, something real, something more than what we had before." I shook my head. "It's not about getting it, Riley. It's about being honest. That's what matters. You can't just make a family out of lies and half-truths." Jenna's hands shook as she reached for her coffee cup, the sound of it clinking against the saucer loud in the quiet room. "I thought this was the way. I thought it would make everything right. I thought you'd be a good father to the baby." "Being a father isn't about being there for a kid just because you think it's the right thing to do," I snapped. "It's about being honest. You don't make a baby in a situation where no one knows what's going on. You don't lie and pretend everything's fine." Jenna's lip trembled, and for a brief second I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered. She was the one who had started this whole mess. She was the one who made me part of it. I stood up, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I couldn't sit there any longer. I had to leave. "I'm done with this," I said, my voice cold. "I'm not your backup plan. I'm not a second choice." I took a step toward the door. "Ethan," Jenna's voice was soft, almost pleading. "Please, you would have been a good father. You are a good person. Don't you want to be a part of this?" I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I just opened the door and stepped out, leaving them behind in that perfect empty house they'd created, built on lies and broken promises. And I felt something inside me shift, like I was finally free. It had been a few months since I walked out of that house, since I'd cut ties with Jenna and Riley. It was funny. At first I thought I'd never find my footing again. I thought I'd be stuck in that awkward, uncomfortable limbo, constantly questioning what went wrong. But life, as it turns out, doesn't wait for you to catch up. It keeps moving, whether you're ready or not. And eventually, I was ready. I found myself slipping back into the rhythm of my own life, slowly but surely. My routine had changed. I started taking on new projects at work, diving deep into the things I'd always wanted to explore but never had time for. I picked up new hobbies, started cooking again, something I hadn't done in ages. I dusted off my old record player and let music fill the silence in my apartment. I was finally creating a life that was mine again, not one that was dictated by someone else's needs or expectations. One afternoon, I found myself in a small bookstore, running my fingers along the spines of the books. I'd always loved getting lost in this place. The smell of paper, the quiet hum of the air conditioning, the low murmur of people browsing. It was like a sanctuary. I stopped at a shelf of fiction, and a title caught my eye. It was one of those self-help books with a ridiculous, over-the-top title, something like How to Find Your True Self in 30 Days or Less. I couldn't help but laugh. The title was so absurd, I had to chuckle out loud. "Yeah, I'm sure it's that easy," I muttered to myself. A voice from beside me made me jump. "Oh, trust me, it's not," the woman said with a grin. "If it were, I'd have read it in a day and be done with this whole self-discovery thing." I turned to see her, a stranger with an easy smile and warm eyes. She was holding a different book, Something classic, like Pride and Prejudice. Her humor was disarming, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. "Yeah, if it were that easy, I'd be a Zen master by now," I said, my lips curving into a grin. We laughed, and just like that the conversation flowed. We started talking about books, life, and what it meant to really live. Not just exist, not just go through the motions. Her name was Sarah. She was an artist, living in the city, just passing through the bookstore to pick up a few things. Her wit matched mine, and our easy banter felt like a breath of fresh air. We talked for what felt like hours, sharing stories about work, relationships, and life in general. I found myself forgetting about all the weight I had been carrying. I didn't even realize how heavy it had been until I was standing there, laughing, feeling like I could breathe again. Finally, we decided to leave together. As we walked out of the bookstore, I realized something that had been slowly creeping into my mind over the last few weeks. I was okay. I was okay without Jenna. Okay without the drama. Okay without trying to be the guy who fixed everyone else's problems. "I'm Ethan," I said as we stepped outside. "And I'm finally okay with not being the guy someone needs to complete their weird little triangle." Sarah laughed, her eyes sparkling. "That's good to hear. It's rare to find someone who actually gets that." As we walked down the street, I couldn't help but feel a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't about finding someone to replace what I'd lost. It was about finding myself again. And maybe that was enough for now. Maybe that was all I needed. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like it was mine to shape. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. And I was finally on the other side.